was fighting for equal opportunity for women in education and the workforce. The sexual revolution was fighting for all sorts of sexual freedoms. Cosmo, we pretended that this sexual revolution was a freedom for women. It actually was not. It was actually kind of a slavery. But we pretended it was freedom for women. And over time, as the sexual revolution and the women's movement got identified closer and closer together, a lot of women began to buy into that illusion.
Is feminism dead? I saw your hand.
I think that depends on the definition of feminism. I strongly think that feminism is more of an action than an identity. I would say it's uplifting all women, in which case it's very alive. At the same time, if we do follow that off into so many different areas that you can look at people like Sheryl Sandberg who say you should just get another nanny if you feel oppressed. And if we're talking about that kind of feminism, yeah, it's pretty dead.
I think feminism isn't actually about equality. It's about equality when it benefits us. I think feminism is really about women wanting special privileges and treatment at the expense of men often. And I think it's alive and well.
It's confession time. The confession is that I am a feminist. I'm a feminist, a true feminist. I'm the type of feminist that believes in the rights of all women, no matter what they look like, where they're from, who they are, real women. I'm a feminist. And that's much more of a feminist than the feminist that's running around causing all the problems for other women. I speak of the toxic feminists, also known as the white feminists. We've seen them on many occasions, and they all run around with the title of being more feminist than any other feminist. You've seen them. They want their abortion rights. They want for whatever they want to do. They want the rights to do that. But as long as they have those rights, the right to do whatever they want, from abortions to cheating on their husbands or whatever it is, they want those rights. But they care less if other women has those rights. All the reproductive rights, the rights to go wherever they want, to have health care. They will fight and fight for themselves to get those rights and all other rights. But when it comes to the rights of other women, they could care less. We saw that on the suffrage movement. The suffrage movement was a noble effort to have women the right to vote. But the thing they don't tell you is that these feminists, so-called feminists, they only cared about their right to vote. They didn't care that all other women, namely women of color, minorities, didn't have those rights, and they weren't fighting for them to have rights to vote. No. They didn't care about that. They fought for themselves to have the right to vote and the right to run for office, the right to do whatever they want, as I said before. But when it came to the rights of, let's say, black women, women of Asian heritage, women of let's say, Latino women, women of any other color except of the white ethnic group, they weren't fighting for their rights. They couldn't care that those groups didn't have the right to vote. They didn't have the right to reproductive rights and be treated like equal humans under the law. Their fight was never for them. Their fight was only for themselves. And this is what we see today. We see it today in every aspect, every life. These toxic feminists vote on all sides of the voting spectrum. Lots of them are even Republican. And that's no surprise because the daughters of the Confederacy were all this exact type of feminists that we're speaking about. They cared about their rights. They wanted the right to do anything. They were the ones who got together, put all their money together in order to erect the statues of the Confederacy, of Confederate heroes that they hold in their heart, people who fought to keep slavery, who fought to prevent the abolition of slavery, people who fought to ensure that people who weren't white didn't have any rights, especially not black people.
Today's video is sponsored by the Mordfall book series. Get your copies today. Detective Monica Ragner's daughter is thrust into the deadliest murder cases in her career. Fear and deception lay at every corner, and her fight to save the lives of others just may cost her own. Get Mordfall Disciple and Mordfall Paraben at these retailers today.
Even now, I can hear some of you ask, what's the big problem? I mean, they voted for the things they knew. I mean, don't all people vote along the lines of what they know and what their experiences are? Except the fact that feminism is supposed to be about liberation, the liberation of women, not just a group of women. Feminism is about liberation of all women from all walks of life, all backgrounds. It's a bit of liberation to make sure it's supposed to be for the rights of all women to work wherever they want, to be able to apply for whatever job they want, to date who they want, to get married to who they want, to be able to drive wherever they want and make their own choices for themselves, to be, as some might say, even liberated from the old bonds of the family, where women were not allowed to have their own bank accounts. They were not allowed to make any purchases for the family. They weren't allowed to do anything because a man was supposed to do everything. And that was the whole thing behind the so-called feminist movement, was to break themselves free from the oppressive tyranny of the man. I want to open my own bank account. I want to be able to not have to wear a bra. I wanted to be able to sing and dance wherever I want, date who I want, be my own person. But that's only if they were someone who weren't from an ethnic, non-white background. Now, I've heard of there's a more acceptable type of feminism, what they call intersectional feminism.
And according to several sources, intersectional feminism considers the intersecting social structures of gender, race, social class, sexual orientation, religion, ability, and age. It rejects the idea that all women experience oppression in homogeneous ways, and it advocates for those who experience oppression with overlapping social categories. It recognizes that oppression is an interlocking system, which, to translate into everyday human being thinking, is that this means that it's feminism that recognizes that all women, no matter what your background is, no matter your identity, your social standing, your race, your class, whatever you are, you have rights. But remember that feminism in its true form also fights for not just issues affecting women, but fights for all the rights of all humans to have their rights. To me, that's true feminism, to be able to push for the rights for anyone, any group that's being marginalized, to be an advocate for whomever is facing discrimination, no matter their background, no matter who they are, no matter what they look like. You don't even have to have met them before, or anybody from their social group. You know how like society likes to put people in boxes. I personally see humans as human beings, no matter what they look like. Everyone are human beings first. I don't like putting people in boxes.
Anybody remember Karens? Karen. Would you be surprised to believe that the Karenism is a byproduct of toxic white feminism? You see, that type of feminism gives them the right to harass anyone they feel like, no matter who it is, no matter where they are, no matter what that person is doing. They believe that they have the right to not to mind their own business, the right to try to harass a little girl trying to sell water bottles on the street to to raise money for a family who very well could be struggling, because that girl, of course, is from a minority background. And we can see that Karen who was overtaken by her Karenism decided to tell that girl that she didn't have the right to try to earn money for her own family. Then there's a Karen who thought it was outrageous for a black man to be trying to use a barbecue at a public park, as he was planning to, have barbecue for a few of his friends, a small party, so to speak, in a public space. So, of course, she called the police. She called the police because someone was using a public space to have a barbecue party with their friends. This was even perplexing, not only for the man she was calling the police on, but everybody who witnessed it that day and people who heard about the story later on. I mean, what gives these Karens the right to interfere with people's lives? Toxic feminism. Because they fought for that right. The right for them to be right, the right for their rights, and their right to oppress other people, regardless of who it is, but mostly people of a minority background, so to speak. People who look different, people who aren't them. So we see where we're going with this, because toxic feminism is a form of racism, or racialism, as some people call it. If we device to use older parlance, racialism. Because you see, toxic feminists, at their very heart, don't care about anybody else's rights. They care only about their rights and the rights of, we could go as far as to say that as long as the people who they like and prefer has rights, they're fine with it. But if anybody else, they could care less. Ironically, a lot of these same people who are part of the toxic white feminist background, even some of those women don't think that women should run for office. They don't think that women can hold authority. Which, when you think about it, is this the same feminists that we're talking about? Yes, mostly yes, and I guess some can argue that they're not feminists, but where's the dividing line? Because sure, they're fighting for the rights for them to have abortions and to be able to do whatever they want. But aren't those same people voting for the rights for themselves to have abortions? Aren't they against female women from holding public office A lot of them are. I guess the extreme wing of those groups don't think that women should. But think about this. If there are, what's the word? If they're thinking that they should be allowed to have abortions, then why will they vote to ensure that women or people of other ethnic groups have the rights they want? Why is it okay for them to have abortions, but vote that public programs be canceled for lower income people? I'm sure they'll say, "Oh, I didn't vote for that. That's not what I voted for." But if you vote for the people who say openly that they want to end those programs and end programs assistance programs that in appearance are meant to help the low income, the minorities, then why did you vote for someone whose interest is to cancel all those programs? Does that make sense? Does that make sense to anybody? So what I'm saying is that, of course, it doesn't make any sense. So who are they to claim the push for rights and to decide that nobody else is allowed to have the same rights that they're pushing for? Why are they so exclusionary? Why don't they want people or care for people to have the same rights that they're fighting for? I wish I could say that I had the experience that other people had with toxic feminism. I mean, Karenism or toxic Karenism. But even if I did, I don't remember. I have a habit of forcing those negative people out of my mind, not to let them affect me in any way, except to laugh at them in their faces as they try to exert their authority over me, which is very hilarious. If any of you have ever experienced any such belligerence from the toxic mob who think that their rights are more important than your rights and they have a right to tell you what to do or what to say, comment down below. Let's start a discussion. Let's talk about it. Let's talk amongst ourselves about the frustrating, infuriating, the hilarious attempts of people to try to infringe upon your own freedom and your own will, and try to tell you what they think should be done with how they think that you should behave in their presence. Comment down below. These women are hilarious, aren't they? They say the strangest things, the darndest things. They say whatever comes to their mind. They care less. They care less. They care less. I remember how noble their fight for their rights seemed and was portrayed by, the media and all of those who were talking about them, how they were, votes for women and they want to be able to take a pill or abortion Roe versus Wade, or around the world you see, especially in Western countries, you saw how those women were pushing for the rights that they really, really wanted. But how many of them, in their minds, were thinking of more of a broad scale of more of the rights of all women? How many of them? How many of them were saying that, they think that in their protests that the oppression of all women must be stopped, of all backgrounds, all the cruel and crude things being said, and how people who didn't look like them didn't have the same experiences as they did, and how things and life was worse than they were having. Do you think for one moment that they took a second and thought and add to their placards and signs and their protests and said, you need to think of the rights for all women. Women who are minority groups, they need to have the same rights as all women. They need to be assured that when they go to have a baby, that the doctors will do all they can to ensure that their lives are saved in giving birth. And that's another issue. The other thing that we don't see too much in the main news or regular news and stories is that women have of different backgrounds, different ethnic group, might fare less well in hospitals when giving birth. They tend to, more women of those backgrounds, especially of women, or black women, tend to have a lower survival rate in giving birth in lots of hospitals, mostly in the U.S. I mean, why is that? We hear of stories of the medical staff, the doctors, the nurses, tend to ignore the complaints, worries, and pain being communicated to them by women of minority backgrounds, especially women who are black. They tend to be dismissed on their concerns and the types of pain they have, and as a result, they tend to have a higher death rate in giving births, which is something that's very scary about that too. I mean, you put your life in the hands of a doctor, and they said, okay, we're gonna, I have this birth, and if we'll roll the dice. If you survive, you do. If you don't, you just don't. I mean, they don't say it to their faces that they're not going to do everything in their power to try to preserve their lives. They just, according to statistics, have a lower interest in doing so. And yet, as we say, we don't see the toxic feminists run around telling groups, the world, that all rights of women should be protected, respected, and advanced. No. We saw in a recent election in a country that should be unnamed for the moment, that certain women in certain more or less what they call red states voted to ensure that these are people who are groups who are supposed to be the pro-life groups, the ones who was said to stand around abortion clinics and decry the acts of abortion. Yet these women who are in what they call red states that predominantly vote Republican, voted to retain their abortion rights, but vote for the very person whose whole work program, whose whole idea is to make life incredibly hard for people of minority backgrounds, who is even now, as we speak, taking away federal funding for all programs that helps non-white people, especially helps black people, helps for funding for Head Start, for the DEI programs, for diversity and inclusion, for disabilities, for people who are less white, as in not white. Do you see what I mean? To anyone who has an ounce of sense, it makes no sense. Not even a pint of sense. These are the same people who won't care a thing about anybody else but themselves. Minority women fighting to have places in their university and having, equal footing as other women do in the workplace, in society. No, they don't care. They don't want it. Doesn't matter. Not their problem. So I'm serious. Any of your experiences with toxic feminism, no matter who you are, no matter if you're from minority backgrounds, black, white, Asian, any group, comment below and tell us what your experience was. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Share this video.